If you've ever tried to learn Python so you can get into AI, you probably know the feeling. You watch one tutorial, then another, you take notes, you nod along, you tell yourself you're learning, and then you sit down to actually build something and your brain just goes blank. Now that's tutorial hell, and it hits extra hard in AI right now because there's a new framework, a new model, a new must-learn topic every single week. So people just keep watching, months go by, and they still haven't built anything. And the wild part is that Python is basically the language of AI. Pretty much every major AI library, every model SDK, every agent framework, it's all Python first. It's also consistently one of the top 3 most in-demand programming skills year after year. And if you pair it with AI, the pay is honestly kind of ridiculous. AI engineering roles in the United States are averaging somewhere around 175 to 200K per year, and senior ones are well into the 300K plus range. So getting this right actually matters. Now in this video, I'm going to give you the exact steps that I'd follow if I was starting from zero today and wanted to learn Python specifically to build AI applications. No fluff, just the stuff that actually gets you building. Let's get into it. Now first, I want to quickly explain why this happens. When you watch a tutorial, your brain is in consumption mode. Someone else is making all the decisions, they're choosing the variable names, they're handling the errors, they're debugging when stuff breaks, and you're just watching the finished version of a fully thought out process. Now it feels like learning because you can understand every line as it goes by, but you're not actually building the muscle of figuring things out yourself. And for AI specifically, this is even worse, because people try to learn all of Python before they're allowed to touch an AI project. They grind through OOP, decorators, design patterns, data structures. They do weeks of this, and they never actually get to the part that they wanted to learn in the first place. Now, you don't need to know all of Python to build AI apps. You need a pretty small slice of it, and then you need to start shipping. Okay, so let's begin with step 1 here, and let's be really specific about what Python you actually need to know. Now you need variables, data types, f-strings, you need lists, dictionaries, loops, and conditionals, and you need functions, basic error handling, try and except. You also need to know how to work with JSON because pretty much every AI API is going to send and receive JSON data. Now you need to know how to read and write files and how to use the environment and environment variables, for example, so you're not just hard coding API keys. And you need the basics of pip, so the package manager in Python, or maybe something like UV, understanding virtual environments and how you can run scripts. Now, it might seem like a lot, but actually that's a pretty small amount of Python, and that's really all you need to know. That's the foundation, and if you can do all of that, you're ready to start building AI apps, and from there you can learn a lot more. Now, what you don't need right now is deep object-oriented programming, metaclasses, async intervals, decorators, or some of the standard library, right? You're going to pick those things up when you actually need them, and it's way easier than trying to learn them from scratch without actually applying them to a real problem. So here's your action step for step 1 here. Go learn that specific list of topics and nothing else. Don't touch a Python course that spends 3 hours on classes before you've written a single for loop. Stick to the list I just gave you, and then second, you can read a Python script end to end and mostly follow what it's doing, move on, and don't wait until you feel like an expert. Because that feeling of mastery doesn't come from watching another tutorial, it comes from building something which you need to do as fast as possible. Now, before I start getting into projects, which is super important here, and I want to discuss the exact projects you need to build, I want to talk about how you should actually be learning this stuff and going through the list that I just discussed. Now, here's the thing. Studies have shown that when you're just watching tutorials or reading blog posts, you're only absorbing about 20% of the material. But when you learn actively by writing real code and building things, that retention jumps to as high as 75 to 90%. Now that's a massive difference, and it's exactly why so many people feel like they're learning but can't actually build anything when the tutorial ends. Now the action step here is simple. Whatever resource you use for step 1 or all of the steps in this video, it needs to make you write code, not just watch it. Now, if you're not typing, you're honestly not learning, and the way to get better is to spend tons of hours actually writing code on the keyboard. Now, this is personally why I recommend DataCamp. Now, I actually used it myself when I was getting into AI development, and the way that it structures hands-on exercises makes things click in a way that passive tutorials just never did. Now, there's 2 tracks specifically that I like. If you're starting from zero, begin with the Python Programming Fundamentals track, which covers variables, functions, lists, dictionaries, which is all hands-on with no passive videos. Then you can jump into their Associate AI Engineer for Developers track, and this is the practical bridge from Python into real AI work. You build actual applications like chatbots, semantic search engines, and recommendation systems using the OpenAI API, Hugging Face, LangChain, and Pinecone. It also covers LLM ops, so how you can deploy and maintain AI systems in production, which is the stuff that most tutorials skip. Now, both tracks come with statements of accomplishment, and you can work towards DataCamp's AI engineering certification to prove your skills to employers. You can get 25% off with my link in the description. Massive shout out to DataCamp for sponsoring this video. Let's move on to step number 3. Okay, so step number 3 is to build your first AI project. Once you understand what you need to learn and you've picked the correct resources for learning, you need to start building. So in step 3, the fastest way to make Python stick is to make an API call to an LLM in your first week of learning. Now here's exactly what you need to do. First, go to OpenAI or Anthropic and grab an API key. Pick one, doesn't really matter. Step 2, you want to pip install their SDK. Step 3, you want to write a 10-line script that sends a prompt and then prints the response from one of these AI models. Step 4, you want to wrap that into a function, take some user input, put it in a loop, and build a really simple CLI chatbot. Now that's it. That's your first AI application, and this already allowed you to call an AI model and get a response. And here's why this is super powerful, and you want to start with mini projects like this. Now, every Python that you learn from this point forward is going to have somewhere to live in your brain. So dictionaries, right? That's the message format that you send to the API. Lists, that's your chat history. Functions, that's how you actually start organizing your code and calling different, functions or operations. Error handling, right? This is something that's going to pop up if you get rate limited or you run out of API usage. You need to know how to handle that. Now, this single project alone is going to teach you more Python than 20 hours of tutorials because every concept has context, right? You're working with something that you're actually building at the same time, so that retention is going to be a lot higher and you're working towards a real application. Now from there, we want to move on to step 4, where we start stacking projects and compounding our knowledge. Now, once your first chatbot is working here, you want to stack a few more projects. Now, personally, I'd recommend that you build the following projects in these orders. First, a CLI chatbot with memory, okay? So what it does is you type messages in your terminal, the bot remembers the whole conversation, and then responds in context. This way, when you're having a back and forth conversation, the bot will actually reference something you said in the past, and then you can store that in something like a basic database or a dictionary, or even an in-memory database in your code. Now, this one forces you to get comfortable with dictionaries, lists, functions, loops, and then that request response cycle of an LLM API. Now, project number 2 is an AI file summarizer or doc Q&A tool. Now, what it does is that you point it to a PDF or a folder or some kind of markdown file, and you can ask a question about the content. Now, what you should be able to do here is kind of like upload some files or point it to a specific location, and then you can go and ask the AI model and it can reference material that was inside of that document. Now, in order to do this, you're going to need to learn about file I/O, reading and chunking text, and then the basics of RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation, which is a super popular pattern, something that's commonly overcomplicated, but that will allow you to build really practical, real AI applications. RAG powers some of the best AI apps out there right now, and if you can learn that immediately, it's going to give you a head start. Now, project 3 is an AI agent with tools, okay? Now, what this does is it gives a model a few different functions that it can call. So it could search the web, read a file, do math, call an external API based on the question or the prompt that you give it. Now, you'll know you're done here when you can ask a question that requires 2 or 3 different steps or external tools, and the agent can actually chain those actions together and complete them. Now, this one is going to force you to learn about JSON schemas, structured outputs, and more complex control flow to call these actual tools. Now, this is a project that makes you feel more like an AI engineer because by the end of this, you have multiple different things combined together, you have a larger script, and you have something that's actually meaningfully useful. Now look, each of these projects should take you no more than a weekend of work, and by the time you're done, you will have written real Python in 3 completely different shapes and actually understand what you're doing. Now this isn't going to be a finished portfolio, but it's going to give you a really strong start, and then you can start leveling up and do some things that are a little bit more complex. So now we move to step 5, and this is where most people are going to relapse. Now they finish a project or 2 and immediately go back to watching a ton of videos because it feels safer than just trying to figure out things on their own. Now don't do this, tutorials are fine, but you don't want to overdose on them. Now once the basics are clicking, you're really going to learn more by reading and building more code, not just by watching something. So your action step here in number 5 is really simple. You want to get better, you want to improve, you want to learn more without relying purely on videos. So first, you want to read the actual documentation of the libraries that you're using. So the OpenAI SDK docs, the Anthropic docs, Fast API, Pydantic, LangChain, whatever it is that you're using for your projects, dig in there, start reading through some things and figure out features that you haven't seen before. Now, number two, you want to rebuild one of your existing projects with something new. So swap the raw API for OpenAI, for example, to LangChain or LangGraph, something a little bit more complex. Add a persistent database, add a front end, deploy it so other people can actually use it. And three, only when you hit a specific wall, like you can't figure out how to deploy something to Vercel or you don't understand async, then you go watch a focused tutorial on that one thing. For me personally, I only watch tutorials when I need to learn something and I couldn't figure it out quickly on my own. You want to be persistent, tutorials are great, but you shouldn't be relying on them. They should be a resource to go to so you can figure out one specific piece of information or one topic that you couldn't have easily found otherwise. Now, quickly, before we go further, I just want to give you a bit of a warning. The biggest trap once you start making progress here is the one more course loop. Now, you finish one track and you immediately start another instead of building something. So you feel productive because you're always learning, right? And you're going through all of these modules, but your portfolio is still empty. Now, my rule of thumb, and the one thing that I want you to remember from this whole video, is that for every hour you spend on learning content, right, like watching a video, you should be spending at least an hour of that writing your own code. You honestly want to have probably a much greater ratio than that, but if you spend an hour watching a tutorial, you should spend at least an hour writing your own code so that you're at least matching that amount of effort and you get that stronger retention. Now look, these structured tracks and courses are fantastic. I've used them myself, but they're really just scaffolding, right? You need to go out on your own, you need to challenge yourself, you need to dig into the docs, and you need to search for things to solve a specific problem, not just to consume or watch content. So here's the entire plan. I'm gonna lay it out one more time just so that it sticks. One, you wanna learn the specific slice of Python that I listed so you have the foundations down. Two, you wanna use a resource that makes you write code, not just watch it. Three, you wanna build a CLI chatbot in your first week. 4, you want to stack 3 projects on top of that. So chatbot with memory, document Q&A, and an agent with tools. And then 5, you want to level up by reading docs and shipping, not by just watching more tutorials. And if you want a structured version of the steps that I just laid out here, then make sure you check out DataCamp's Python Fundamentals and the associate AI engineering track that I've linked in the description. Again, they've been a long-term partner of the channel. I've used them personally, and you can get 25% off using my link below. Let me know if this video was helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in another one.